Of all the characters to like, you would not think the Invisible Man to be high on any lists. He's actually one I really appreciate. Of all the classic monsters, he may have the least interpretations, but he makes up for it with a strong development that is mostly relegated to the book. He may not have the benefit of having as many interpretations as Dracula, nor the immediate thematic strength of the Wolfman or Frankenstein's creature, but he makes up for it with one really interesting concept: the free will of humans and what to do with the power they hold. Unfortunately, that's the point that is more or less often poorly executed in most adaptations. I'm a big fan of movies as well, so I watched the original movie. It's pretty on point until the end and botches the fundamental aspects of the character. The Invisible Man is an evil person. In the original movie, they chalk up his sudden attitude change as being the result of the chemicals rendering him crazy. In the comic book, he's given a sad backstory. He has a lost love interest and he was made fun of for being albino. Yes, he's albino, that's a point that's often left out of adaptations. It has absolutely no bearing in the story of the book. Nobody cares. In the Kevin Bacon movie, same thing. The process made him crazy. The only adaptation that comes close to the original interpretation are the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, the comic specifically, and the 2021 version of the Invisible Man. In the League comic, he's literally a molester, and in the movie, he's straight up evil, although he becomes invisible by way of a suit and not a chemical. It's okay to have different interpretations of a character. That's what can make an old story feel fresh. However, we hardly see the original interpretation being translated. It's pretty obvious writers and directors are afraid of making a protagonist that's not completely good. Protagonist is simply a term for a character we follow as an audience member, nothing else. The original was the closest overall adaptation, but dropped the ball near the end. The Invisible Man is a callous, uncaring man who would not hesitate to make animals suffer and to use his violence against anyone who defied him. Another aspect that's somewhat neglected is the actual power. Most of the time they give him a scarf and think, well, that's a wrap. The book version had pages and chapters dedicated to the logistic of being invisible. The last movie, of course, had refractive technology with the suit and goggles to see, as you would be blind if you refracted all light. It's an aspect that's well thought of, but the book had this great thing about not being able to go back to normal and the struggle of having to hide the ability to society at large. We don't think about it, but certain powers would be quite useless in day-to-day life, require secondary abilities to work, or demand certain discretions to not be found out. Super speed would attract too much attention unless you can run as fast as the Flash, but at that point you would destroy everything around you. Something more similar to Quicksilver, 320 kilometers per hour, would be more realistic but harder to hide. Super strength has to be hidden. You can't lift a car in front of everyone, but I suppose groceries and moving to another house would be made easier. Pyrokinesis would only be useful in the forest to start a fire, or inside your house to cook. When would you need to burn someone alive? And if you have an answer for that, well, you have problems with your relationships. The first lines of the book start with a snowstorm, which really sets the mood. Griffin, the protagonist, had to find a way to get warm without attracting attention. Being invisible requires him being naked, but left vulnerable to the elements. He has to steal clothes, can't simply pay for them, and when he's finally clothed, you can share his joy at having found warmth hiding inside the store, finally dressed. He also has to worry about dirt catching on him and leaving footprints. Nothing quite explored these different aspects like the book did. It was also a new unexplored power, but now it seems to be the least explored out of all the abilities. I doubt we'll ever see a decent adaptation, especially now, but what if the Japanese took over the IP, like they did with the recent Cyberpunk Edge Runner? They're really good at going all out and going deep into taboos and weird interpretations. Maybe an 8-episode TV series could also do the trick to give time to explore the different aspects. One can only hope.